Hey, Blythe, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks for having us. Or I guess just me. I'm so used to saying us for Evren.
Well, you know what? That's a great founder move. I definitely had to practice that instead of, for my first startup, it was my idea. But I had to let go of that and be like, it's our team because it's not just you at the end of the day.
Yeah, I literally just got coached on that. I was responding to investors and I was kind of saying I, and my
Uh-huh.
executive chairman went back and corrected we all through.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I tell even solo founders they should do that though. Make you
Yeah.
look bigger, right? How did we originally get connected? I can't. Oh my gosh! I think what happened was I came across your company and I reached out cold because I think
Yeah,
what year.
through maybe LinkedIn and also the website.
Yeah, I did. I went on your homepage and it was like contact us, and I was like, "Hi, my name's Brittany. I think what you're doing is really important." And oh, that's right. That's right. I love thinking back to how I connected with people. It's always some different kind of story. Well,
Yeah, and I personally get every contact form that comes through our website. That might change in the future, but I love when I'm like, ooh, I got another message through the website.
yeah,
So it's always great to see who's connecting with us.
totally. Well, before we get into the amazing product that you're working on and how important it is, I'm anticipating this may even get kind of intense, and I'll let her, I've told our viewers in the intro, like this might be a heavy podcast, but it's so important. But before we get into it, I want to learn about you. Our listeners want to learn about you. Where are you from? What did you study? Have you ever been an entrepreneur before? And how did you end up here being the CEO of Evren?
Yeah, so well, I grew up in the Southeast. My family mostly lived in Gainesville, Florida. So that's where I went to middle school and high school. And it wasn't really a big medical device area, which was my interest. I did biomedical engineering undergrad at Hopkins. And so I never really thought I could come back to Gainesville to pursue medical device. So I've lived a lot of different places around the US. I ultimately got an MBA from Darden at UVA. And I've just done about 20 years of medical device work with both small and large companies and strategy consulting in this space, and had been working in LA for Boston Scientific. Really did not enjoy being that far from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home and thought, well, I'll just consult until I find a job in the Southeast. And that's when I was introduced, actually through my tennis ladies, to the woman who founded the Innovation Hub here at UF,
Okay.
Jane Muir. She's awesome. And she was like, you can't move back out of Gainesville. You have to be an entrepreneur. I'm connecting you to everyone. She started introducing me to all these entrepreneurs in the area. She got the Office of Technology Licensing to start sending me things they thought I might be interested in. And through that, I connected with Weaver Gaines, who's my executive chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually started out that he was the CEO and I was the COO. And the plan was always to transition after I got comfortable with the role,
Yeah.
which we've now done. And it's been
Oh,
great. So it's sort of like I have training wheels, which is awesome. It makes me very comfortable.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And um, how did you decide that, PTSD was the thing you wanted to work on?
Well, I think my family has a long military tradition, and I wasn't personally in the military. My father was, my brother attended VMI, and I've just always had a lot of friends in the military and known people who have struggled with this. And Weaver also is a veteran. His father probably had PTSD. And so, we just all have a lot of personal connections to that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I discovered, so what happened was the Office of Technology Licensing sent me a patent, basically, from some inventors at UF. And we were talking to them about helping them negotiate a license with a different company. When
Okay.
I found out that they actually had the first research with this type of technology on a PTSD population. And I got really excited about it because I know that there aren't a lot of good solutions out there.
Yeah.
And so I basically had to work on them for a year to get them agree for me to use it to try and treat people with PTSD before they allowed me to do it. And I still struggle with them sometimes to try and get them on board because they worry about conflict of interest with their own research at the VA and at
Uh-huh.
UF. So
Yeah.
we have to make sure we stay separate,
Mm-hmm.
but they're great guys.
All right. So you come across this technology that you have the ability to potentially license. It's in an area of PTSD, which you're like, I know this is a big issue. Tell us about what is Evren Technologies and when did it actually start?
Yeah, so I think I met the guys even back in 2017. We didn't officially start the company until the end of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And the technology itself is neuromodulation, which is what I had done at Boston Scientific most recently. So it's something you wear. It's not an implant. So
Mm-hmm.
we call it transcutaneous because it goes through the skin. And we're targeting the vagal nerve. So it's transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation. And the vagus nerve is important because it helps balance. Let me see if I can do this in a way that's easy to understand. It's very complex. It balances your autonomic nervous system. So if you have a trauma, your body goes into fight or flight mode. Most people have heard of that. And that's your sympathetic response. Your heart rate goes up, you get really alert. We call it hypervigilance. And people with PTSD never fall back into the parasympathetic response of rest and recuperate.
Yeah, your body always thinks you're in danger constantly.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And that sort of filters into all the symptoms for the most part. So what stimulating the vagus nerve does is it actually boosts the parasympathetic response so you can get back to rest and recuperate.
It's like telling your body like, no, you're good. You're good. Come back over here. You're safe. Yeah. All right. So you said neurostimulation. I love to break down these terms because sometimes I think I know what they are, but our listeners may not. So what do you mean by neurostimulation?
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question. So neuro is nerve. So we are targeting a nerve. Technically the type of stimulation we're doing would be a peripheral nerve. So that's not in your, spinal cord or in your brain. It's a nerve that goes somewhere else in your body. But the vagus nerve, so you have 10 cranial nerves that come out of your cranium. It is the largest, the one that goes all over your body. It's actually called vagus because vagus, Vagus, in Latin means wandering. And
it's all one nerve?
It's all one nerve. It goes all over. So it doesn't necessarily, so the area that we're targeting in the ear, so we have an earbud design, which is another really cool thing about what we have. It targets the auricular branch. Auricular is just another Latin word meaning ear. So that's part of the vagus nerve. What's cool about the auricular branch, besides the fact that it lets us do our earbud design and make it just look like any other wearable, is that those fibers that we hit go straight into the centers of the brain that we're trying to deal with. We're not getting any off target, it's going to the gut or anything else like that. We're going right into the brain centers.
Whoa. Okay. So neurostimulation. And what are you stimulating it with again? Are you zapping my ear? Are you like, what's happening?
I think I keep taking you off on tangents.
No. I love the tangent. My job as a host. Bring us back.
So it is electrical stim. So what we do is every time you wear it, you start turning it up until you feel it. That's it. It's just a light tingle. We call it paresthesia. And that's just as a light tingly sensation. Some people compare it to a TINS unit, but it's much, much softer than that. Like, do not try and strap a TINS unit to your ear after hearing this podcast.
I don't even know what that is. So I won't do it. I won't put anything
They're
there.
Those muscle stimulator, the electrical muscle stimulators for like back pain and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
But it's the same kind of idea, which is you have electrical stimulation on the surface of the skin. It's just done very differently.
All right. So a little bit of electrical stimulation, feels tingly. It's in your ear. Does it matter which ear?
No, although that is a good question again, because there have been some people that did in the past, or I guess there is a company that does cervical placement. Cervical meaning at the neck area.
I was thinking cervix. I was like,
I know everybody.
Girl, I think that's
say cervical, and people are like, wait, no, they mean like the cervical vertebrae. So you can target the vagus nerve in the neck. You can get some off-target effects because it takes more energy because the nerve is deeper. We're very close to the surface in the ear. And you end up innervating, which means activating areas other than what you're trying to get. So you can get voice hoarseness and other things. The implanted devices are in the neck and they have to deal with that. We don't have the side effects that cervical has.
Okay. So it's in the ear. And does your wearable only fit on the one ear over the other?
Oh,
Or
right. You were asking me left or right. It's like I'm not even listening to your questions. So in the neck, if you do it on the right side, you can innervate things that could cause problems. So traditionally, they only did vagal nerve stimulation on the left because of the cervical placement.
okay.
So most testing is still only done in the left ear because of that, but it literally doesn't matter which ear you go in. So
Okay.
that's where I was going with it, and I totally forgot.
And so again, I just want to because I mean, the body is just mind blowing, but the vagus nerve essentially is in goes by both of your ears, but it's all the one nerve. It's all attached and it's in your
Well,
neck.
there are branches of it, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
I'm thinking of like one long noodle. It's like
I
all
like that imagery. I like that. It's a little bit different.
But it's not. Okay. All right. All right. There's like branches. All right.
Yeah.
So, the vagus nerve, does it do anything besides regulate your sympathetic, parasympathetic systems?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it depends on which scientist you talk to and the connections. I was literally just talking to a doctor who kept talking about norepinephrine, which is the drug that your body releases in stressful situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times when they talk about activating the vagus nerve, it will adjust norepinephrine levels in your body. And if you want to get into the science behind norepinephrine, I'm the wrong person. But it affects a lot of other systems. So we have seen that vagal nerve stimulation can be used in a lot of disease states. So a lot of the things you consider associated with PTSD, stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, our patients are definitely reporting they feel changes in sleep. And people are using it to deal with anti-inflammatory issues, IBS. You can also, there's another mechanism of action wherein it helps you lay stronger neural pathways, which is scientific speak for we can help you learn something better, faster, stronger. So if you pair it with stroke rehabilitation, people will rehabilitate faster, things like that.
Wow. Okay. Okay. This is awesome. This is super, super interesting. How long ago did we discover this vagus nerve? Do you know?
I actually have no idea. My guess would be, back in the ages of creepy cadaver dissections that were illegal. I'm not sure they quite understood it. And I think we're still in the infancy really today of fully understanding the effects of the vagus nerve. It's, when neuromodulation came around as an industry a couple of decades ago, they were not thinking about the vagus nerve that much.
No. I mean, considering our system is so new to even talking about trauma in the body, it's not surprising that even if they discovered it, that's not the date of them knowing that PTSD and trauma is regulated by that nerve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. I've had a lot of questions, but I have many more. It's like my tagline in my life is like, I have questions. So my next set of questions are about, let's talk about trauma and let's talk about how it is shown in the body. And I would love for you to tell us like in general, but then also give us some like statistics about how women in particular, what kind of traumas are affecting them. And maybe if they show it differently in terms of the symptoms of PTSD, does everyone get PTSD? Like, let's get into like that part of it. So,
yeah. I mean,
and
just
what does
to back up,
PTSD stand for? We should probably define that.
Right. So PTSD, for those of you who are unaware, is post-traumatic stress disorder. And in fact, a lot of people now like to refer to it only as PTS, not that it's a disorder at all. It's just post-traumatic stress. But we stick with PTSD because that's what most people have heard.
Yeah.
And it is caused by a traumatic event or a series of traumatic events. That's sort of the one major thing that sets it apart from other disorders. And it can lead to a bunch of different symptoms. And everybody has their own unique mix. So some of those symptoms are, as I mentioned before, depression, anxiety, poor sleep, hypervigilance, that always being on the lookout, You can have bad social interactions. You become withdrawn. You stay at home because you're trying to avoid triggering places or events.
Mhm.
You can be blaming yourself or others for the situation.
Mhm.
And it also has really high comorbidities with substance abuse
Yep.
and suicide, homelessness, things like that.
Yep.
And one of the things recently that I was looking at, they said one of the things that you typically see that's different for men and women when it comes to this is some of the more um, self-harming behaviors that you see in the PTSD population. For men, it's very outward. It's drug abuse, it's substance abuse, it's
Mhm.
more focused on self-hurting.
Mhm.
And for the women, it's more being angry with themselves and their own self view and how they connect with others
Mhm.
because they internalize a lot of stuff a lot differently.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, um, I mean, if it's not obvious, I've probably said it on other episodes, but I'm a survivor of trauma. I 110% have PTSD. It's something I've worked on. About 4 years ago, I even had to go inpatient for a month to get treatment for it because it was out of control. Honestly, I was, suicidal ideation, and I knew like I didn't actually want to die, but my brain was just like so tired of dealing with like the memories and the lack of sleep and the anxiety and, people always being like, girl, why is your startle response like crazy? Like you can't
Hmm.
sneak up on me and stuff. And, there was a point before that inpatient treatment experience where I was just like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like this stuff I'm upset about is childhood stuff. And like, here I am, like in a PhD program, I'm 24, like living life, and at that point I was sober, I was abusing drugs and alcohol in college. And at that point I was even sober and suicidal. And so it was just like really strange to me. And I can remember calling up a friend and I said, I wish there was like rehab, like drug rehab, but for PTSD. And she was like, that exists. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? It does? Like where and how? And so I went into this 30-day program where they, taught me, which I freaking loved, which they taught me about the biology of trauma and how it was in my body and what that did for me. And kind of why I bring it up right now is that I was like, why am I so broken? Like, why am I so weird? Why am I so strange? Like, why can't I just get over this? And they taught me about the vagus nerve and fight or flight and freeze. I'm a freezer personally.
Mhm.
I just kind of dissociate, and so the blaming yourself, I totally relate to that. What are
Yeah.
like the statistics of PTSD in the US, and do women get it more?
Yeah. And so I will have to caveat this with every study has different numbers,
Yeah.
right? But typically we see about um, 20% of returning vets have it. So that's your male population for the most part. Men get it in general in the US at a rate of about 4%. Women have it at a rate that is double that. So 1 in 9 women will have it at some point in their lives.
1 in 9 women. Wow. And speaking of veterans, I did have somebody on the show that mentioned like, although more men are in the service and going to war and such, but the women that go are almost all gonna have trauma.
Yeah, I read a study and I could be quoting this wrong, so I will caveat this, but I
Yeah.
could have sworn they said that the PTSD rate for women was like over 90%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Like guaranteed,
crazy.
if you're a woman in combat, like you're gonna have it. That's
Well,
so
and not even just
crazy.
combat. I think that's a misconception, actually. It's been
Oh.
interesting to look into that. It seems that you actually get higher rates of PTSD in the non-combat roles, and I have a theory around it, which could be wrong.
Oh,
But
I love theories. This is a theory, y'all, not proven, but tell us.
yeah, but it seems that the types of traumas that you have less control over seem to cause PTSD at higher rates. So they have done studies that show things like sexual assault will create PTSD at a much higher rate than, say, an active combat situation. And I
Where
think,
you're like holding a gun and it's like
and you
you're firing
feel like maybe you
back.
could do something about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you're at a base and you're passively being bombed and there's this constant threat that you have to be hyper vigilant about, but you can't protect yourself,
Yeah.
that can have more of an impact on you than if you felt like you had control of the situation. So I think that level of feeling like you have control
Yeah.
is very central to your ability to develop PTSD. I think it's central, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're different, to people that have PTSD and how they view their life is their ability to control and their
Oh,
capacity
girl.
to stay
I've
in
been working on my
balance.
control issues for a long time now. Like perfectionist Brit has had a lot of therapy sessions because my trauma was childhood, and it was, sexual abuse, physical abuse. But I feel like there's also this piece that was because I was a child, and like, I didn't felt like I had no control because it was like, well, I live here and
Yeah.
like I'm a kid, and so there was that sense of lack of control.
Yeah, and I think we can get into a conversation around complex PTSD. It's not well understood. We don't at Evren focus on it as a separate condition at
Uh-huh.
all.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's a lot of evidence around childhood traumas being more related to complex PTSD, which
Can you
has
just
its,
define the definition, or like what's the
yeah, I'm going to
difference?
be really bad at this, but basically there's a whole other set of symptoms that go along with it that it
Oh,
can be shared to a certain extent with bipolar. You're more,
yeah.
you have more difficulty making personal relationships and the
Mhm.
self-blame, and that's all kind of part of the complex PTSD.
Yeah.
I used to think that complex PTSD was because you had multiple traumas. That's not it at all.
Oh. Yeah, but what I
But even
hear,
in our own diagnostic, we call it the CAPS-5, the clinician administered PTSD scale, the one they use
yeah.
in the United States. It does not designate complex to regular, or I
Oh,
wouldn't call it regular,
yeah,
complex or
yeah,
PTSD. It just
yeah.
doesn't separate the two at all.
Got it. Got it. Whew, this is intense. This is going really well though. This is so important. It's so important. So if 1 in 9 women are, experiencing PTSD, I heard you said like at some point in their life,
Mhm.
you know, maybe this is my PTSD brain, but like I feel like this is something I'm going to have for forever. And maybe that's because I have the complex like childhood version, but are there people who just like have PTSD for like a year and then they're like they don't have it?
Well, I think that yes would be the answer to some people, right?
Uh-huh.
But I think, they've now shown that you don't necessarily have to immediately develop PTSD. It can pop up later.
Mhm.
You could
Mhm.
think you were okay for a while and then it can be re-triggered.
Yep.
You could have it under control and then something goes out of whack in your life and so it goes up. I was just describing it earlier today about it being like an allergic reaction, your histamine level. It can get up to a point where everything is setting off your allergies,
Uh,
and you take an antihistamine to try and drop that level so that things aren't triggering you all the time. And so I think, your sleep goes out of whack or other things happen, then you start to express more symptoms. Your severity maybe gets worse. You can make it better for a while. So I think some people feel like I had it and I took care of it.
mhm.
And now that's part of my past. But I think most people think that they either have it or they had it and it's now under control. And please don't make me upset this balance.
Mhm. Are current treatments like doing it for people, and or are they not, and that's why we need your vagus nerve stimulator?
Yeah. So, and people will say different things about this, but the two approved treatments for PTSD in the United States are exposure therapy, which can include all forms of cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapies. And there are one or two therapies that are not considered exposure therapy, but let's just kind of lump it all together. Exposure therapy, you have to relive the trauma or talk about the trauma in some way.
Mhm.
And and that can be effective for maybe 2/3 of people
Mhm.
if they can do it and complete it.
Mhm.
One of the problems you see with therapy is there's a really high dropout rate. That it's very uncomfortable to have to relive
Yep.
those traumas and people don't want to do it. And I don't blame them. I
Mhm.
personally am claustrophobic. the way you would cure my claustrophobia would be to lock me in a box and prove that I'm safe. And I just don't really buy into that. So I can
Yes.
understand why some
Yes.
PTSD patients also don't like that idea.
Yep.
So you see high dropout rates. I will say that women tend to do better with cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think that's because they're a little bit more willing to delve into those things than men are. Once again, me having assumptions. So I'm
Yeah.
not a clinician. And then there are SSRIs. So those are antidepressants. They're serotonin receptor, you know, and so that's like your Prozac, anything like that.
Yeah.
Those are effective in about 2/3 of the population at reducing symptoms.
Okay. Yeah.
In 1/3 can they get you to what they call a remission level. So you're at least testing
Oh,
under a certain level on the CAPS-5
yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
But if you talk to my patient advisory board, most of that board has quit taking the drugs because the side effects they were experiencing
Oh.
were worse than any help they were getting from the drugs.
Uh-huh.
So basically I talk to a lot of people who have tried everything they feel like, and they have come up with some balance in their lives that involves meditation, exercise, trying to think good thoughts before going to bed, all sorts of different things as a way for them to self-help.
Yeah.
But they don't actually feel like they've cured it in any way, shape, or
Yeah. 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 I'm like resonating with all of it because I'm on meds, but it's mostly just to get me to a point where I can like do work on it, right? Like
yeah.
if I get sad and I cry, I can cry for like 10 minutes and then I'm like, okay, I had a good cry. But like before I was on meds, it was like my vagus nerve, I guess, right? And my whole body was like, oh no, we're crying. And it was like this whole hour of sobbing. And it was like, this is out of
Right.
control. Like I'm not processing anything anymore. I just like am uncontrollably crying. So for me, the meds were a way to like keep like bumpers, like little bumpers on my lane, keep me
Yeah.
there. And then
And if that works for you, that's great. There's
yeah,
certainly a percentage of the population that works for.
yeah,
Sometimes that works for them for the very long run. Sometimes it's to restore to a certain point so that you can work on it and then you can go back off the
mhm,
drugs.
mhm.
So, everybody's got their own thing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try drugs if you have
Yeah,
PTSD. And I'm not saying
yeah,
you shouldn't try
yep,
exposure therapy.
yep,
There are things that work for people. And there
yep,
is something called, I always get the acronym wrong, EMDR,
yep,
EDRM,
yep, yep,
EMDR. It's this thing where you do rapid eye movement as you do therapy, and it's supposed
yeah,
to make it more effective. People have seen really good results with that if you can find an EMDR place, if you're willing to do the therapy with the EMDR.
yep, yep,
So that seems to boost the results of therapy to a
yep,
certain extent. What's great about our earbud is if you're uncomfortable with therapy, if you have been having side effects from the drugs,
mhm,
our device is a very easy device to use, and it has no known significant adverse side effects.
mm,
So even if you're not sure it's going to work for you, you can try it without worrying about what it could be causing, how it might throw off your current balance you're maintaining for PTSD. You can kind of maintain your lifestyle and see if this works for you.
yeah. Would people put it on when they're feeling symptoms, or they like do it every morning, or do they do it all day?
So yeah, they can actually do any of those. So we
Okay.
want it to really feel like use it when it works for you,
Uh-huh.
right? If
Uh-huh.
you have if you have issues with insomnia, your biggest thing is falling asleep and staying asleep, then
Mhm,
wear it for an
mhm.
hour before you go to bed, right? If
Yes.
you have social avoidance, maybe you want to wear it in the morning to get all jazzed up. Maybe you get really stressed out in conference calls. Wear it during your conference calls.
And it just
You
looks like
know,
a snazzy little earbud.
well, that is the point. Like we have designed it so that you can wear it around and nobody's going to go, "What's that?"
What the
Right?
hell? Yeah,
And
yeah,
if they
yeah,
do, you can just be like, "Oh, it's the Phoenix. Don't worry about it." But
yeah.
it doesn't look like what's that in terms of, you're wearing a medical device. It looks
Yeah.
like maybe a cool earbud, right? So, we've had so far in our tests with patients, and I will have to admit right now it's not in earbud form. We're still in a prototype. So
Okay.
it's in a fanny pack with an ear attachment. So most of the people using it are just using it at home in the morning and evening. But
Uh-huh.
they've said, I really want to wear this to the grocery store because I have
Yeah,
issues going to the grocery store,
yeah.
or I felt a panic attack coming on, so I decided to put it on, and I think it really helped with that. So yeah, we're definitely, people are wanting it in the earbud form so they can wear it out more often.
Yeah. When can I get it? So what's your timeline? And is this like something that has to be prescribed by a doctor?
It does have to be prescribed. It will not be available for at least another year because right now we have the prototype and we're doing a pilot.
Yeah.
And we're actively looking for investors to finish getting it into the earbud form factor and then doing an FDA clinical trial. So if anybody's listening and they have PTSD and they're interested in the product, you can certainly contact us to join our patient advisory board. You'll help us in the product development. And then you will be contacted when we do studies to see if you would be, I mean, you have to be screened by the clinical people, right? I can't guarantee you a spot, but we can put you on the contact list for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so important, especially if 1 in 9 women are experiencing PTSD. And, and we talk a lot about birth control as like having so many symptoms, but like there's no other solution to contraception except hormones. So I'm really excited about potentially all the women out there that, Prozac decreases their libido, or Zoloft makes them overweight, or, whatever their side effects are, that there finally could be this alternative to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the best, I have a lot of people asking me, what are the clinical effects? Well, yeah, we're testing pretty well clinically, right? We're helping people reduce their symptoms.
Yeah.
But even more importantly to me, the fact that you can have something that fits into your daily life and there are no side effects that you see with these other things. I shouldn't ever say no side effects, no significant adverse side effects. That's great, because some of the current options, you don't even know what kind of roll of the dice you're doing with these drugs. And I think with every drug that you might be taking for PTSD, you have to find the balance. Sometimes you have to try multiple drugs to see which one works for you. It can be quite a process.
Yeah. My experience with PTSD is that it's like a buffet of things I have to do, sometimes on a daily basis. Right. But it's like not just one thing fixes it. And there's like all these different ways to address it. And so this is an awesome one, because a lot of them require me to like sit in a quiet room with music for 30 minutes. And I'm like, I'm a CEO and a podcast host. Like, I don't have time to like sit here and journal and, so I'm really looking forward to like, if in the future, if people see me podcasting with the earbud on, y'all will know that.
Awesome.
They're not a sponsor. I'm just a patient. So awesome. And, what about the future of Evren? Do you have like ideas for making other wearables, or is this the thing that you're like, this is what we're focused on?
Well, we really want to be a company focused on PTSD. There is no company out there whose sole purpose is to help those with PTSD from sort of a medical device clinical standpoint.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, so I think, we're looking at layering on other things that help with that population. So we're actually, before the earbud comes out, hopefully in the first quarter of 2021, we'll be launching a PTSD symptom tracking app. So I know a lot of people, when they're first diagnosed, they're told to start tracking their symptoms, get a baseline, and then they can start tracking them to see how they're doing. And there isn't anything like that out there right now. So we're going to be providing that. Then from there, we're going to, if you want to share this with your clinician can be viewing how you're doing or send you specific assessments and you can track those. And then we'll launch the medical device. So we got a whole sort of support system that we're building around this. And then from there, we're looking at, well, can we deal with acute stress? So in that first month or two after a trauma, they think that if you treat stress early on, treat the trauma, you can reduce those that develop PTSD. So can we help people not even get it? And can we go into adjacent symptoms? So like, we know we're helping with insomnia. Can we just be a sleep aid? Can we just help with anxiety or stress? Probably. But those are all the things that we see in our future.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I remember we talked about your symptom tracking app and one of the things that really excited me was I said, are you going to have like options of symptoms for people to pick from? Because I know for me, there was things that I've literally just lived with my whole life. And it wasn't until I really dug into the PTSD treatment that they were like, oh, that's a symptom. And I was like, what? Like, I thought that was just like
Yeah.
who I was. And, and now I don't have these certain things, but it was like really revealing to me, wow, all of this is trauma. I thought like the PTSD symptom was just crying a lot, but like turns out it was like all these other things, that I had no idea.
Yeah, and it's very unique to each person, right? There is an app out there from the VA that you can walk through formal assessments where you have to answer every question. And we want people to say, okay, these are my top 5 symptoms that I generally have. And
Mhm,
so that's what's going to pop up on the front screen.
mhm.
And if something else comes along, I can look that up and stick that in. But it's going to be very designed for you to make unique to what we're not here to gather data in a clinical process and rank you on the CAPS 5. We want to give you a tool that helps you track in a way that's comfortable for you. I keep comparing, and I know my entire development team is super uncomfortable about it, but I'll give you a plug for a fertility tracking app.
Yeah.
It's called Clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people track it for fertility. Some people just want to know when their period is coming up, whatever it is. I love the app. I can put in exactly which symptoms are the ones I care about, and I
Uh-huh.
track it when I want to. It's not bugging me and popping up like plug it in now. So I keep sending this like room full of men onto the Clue app to
Oh my gosh. That is awesome because we actually just interviewed Ida Tin, the CEO and
really.
founder
Oh,
of
that's
Flip. We just
cool.
interviewed her. So
I haven't
shout
actually
out
met her. I
Ida.
need an intro.
I love that because I feel like a lot of things right now are just like take this survey, find out if you're totally screwed. And I'm like, cool. Thanks for confirming it.
Yeah.
But like now what? No, I do.
I like the ones that tell me which Friends character I am.
I love to know what kind of dog I am. I
There
love
you go.
that. Yeah, I
That's a good
usually
one.
am a pit bull, like really tough, but actually super sweet, kind of intimidating, but actually just wants to cuddle. You're like,
I
yeah.
like it.
Well, this has been seriously so much fun. This is such an important topic. I'm obviously very personally driven by this. I know it affects women disproportionately. The things that cause PTSD disproportionately affect women. So I'm however I can help you succeed. So I can get an earbud. I would love to do that. And I know a lot of our listeners probably, I mean, 1 out of 9, 10% of them probably, feel this. So I want to ask you 2 last questions that our listeners
Sure.
love. The first one is, if somebody wanted to start a FemTech company, because we have a lot of aspiring FemTech founders that listen, what's an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating?
An area that still needs innovating. I don't know so much about what still needs innovation, but I know that, and this is an area I could get on a major soapbox around this. You know that company Roman, where the guys can go to call, they're uncomfortable calling their doctor about trying to get their little blue pill?
Yeah.
Who cares? Because women have been so scared for so long to go to the doctor about any issues they have. I worked in women's health a while back for J&J, and they're petrified. They don't understand hysterectomies. They don't understand what's wrong with their system. They don't know what the options are. And who cares if men need a little blue pill? Like, we're talking about life or death situations here. Your
Yes.
ability to bear children. This is more important than your enjoyment of sex, right?
Yes.
So how come something like Roman is getting funded, but
Yep.
nothing has been funded for women to discuss these things in a way that's safe and
Yes.
feels like it's anonymous for them to get that information? That makes me mad.
100%. I love it.
So it's not necessarily innovation, it's just, come on, people.
Yep. Women have been, just, well, you've been dealing with it this long, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a pretty big feminist. I mean, the people who are watching the recording of this, I got my pink hair dye in, I'm like super, super feminist. I got uteruses on my table here and 3D printed ones, y'all, not real, but
I like it.
um nevertheless, like I went to the grocery store the other day and I was like, I needed to buy condoms, and I was a little uncomfortable. And then turns out they were behind a locked glass door and you would have to ask somebody to open it. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what? I'm like really out there. I do sexual wellness episodes all the time. Like, our audience knows I'm getting it, but like, I felt so uncomfortable asking somebody to like unlock this glass case. And I was like, oh,
Well, and
why
that's
are we
why they're
making
locked
this
up,
so
right?
hard?
Because so many people just steal them instead of paying because they're too embarrassed.
Yes. That's why it's behind there, because people are stealing it because they're so uncomfortable buying it. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God. So I love that. Let's reduce shame, right? And
Yeah.
increase accessibility. Oh, I love that. I love it. Our last
Like the way you summarized it.
Our last question is, what does the FemTech industry as a whole need the most right now in order to be successful?
Funding. I mean, so,
Funding.
I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I live in the world of entrepreneurs. There's a great program actually in Gainesville called EWITS. It's Empowering Women in Technology Startups.
Ooh.
And I was a mentor, and we looked a lot at stats on how women raise, and we're very hard on each other just as much as the men are on us.
Mhm.
And funding is very hard for women. And, there are starting to be some angel and VCs that are investing in women-led companies. I have found a lot of times they're still not comfortable in the medical device area.
That's what I found too. Yeah.
And so it's still hard to find ones that are willing to invest in medical device. They have their own sort of special rules and timeline, and you have to understand it.
Yep.
So I have wasted a lot of time talking to people who are very interested and then realize they have to deal with the FDA and they get very freaked out.
Yep.
So I would say that's a major need.
Absolutely. So, and I'm very bullish that FemTech should be founded by both genders. I am very happy to report that like 80% of our founders are women, right? Solving their own problems. But the men have issues raising too, because it's so crazy to think that a man would care about women's endometriosis. And so, their barrier to getting funding is people not believing like why they would do this or why they're going to lead
Which
it.
is exactly why we have a Roman out there.
Yes.
And not something for women.
Yep. Rebecca or something, right? Something else
Right.
out there. But it's an interesting point you bring up, because I've recently noticed it. I'm, fundraising for our venture fund, and I'm, talking to a lot of high net worth individuals, and there are, a lot of women that want to invest in women. And so this like piques their interest, because they're like, oh, women's health, that sounds great. And then I'm like, here's this like diagnostic tool for breast cancer, and they're like, oh, like I like more like retail or hospitality. And I'm like, come on, ladies in STEM. I think we had this big push for women to get into STEM. Now we need to get those women to come now into investing,
Right. People are still, as much as they want to support it, they're still more comfortable with a woman having a company that fits into the traditional sort of mom-wife role. We're selling cookies, or we're helping in education or something like that, which is great. We should be in every industry, right?
Yep.
But it is a little bit more difficult, I think, in medical device biotech.
Yeah, totally. Well, Blythe, I could literally talk to you all day. I'm probably going to like call you later and talk to you more about my symptoms and how can I get an earbud and all this stuff, because this is really, really important stuff. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And, for everybody listening, riseaboveptsd.com.
Riseaboveptsd.com. Got it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.